Welcome to this BBMA course in English. Finally, it's here. Not a lot of people on YouTube are teaching BBMA in English. Now, let's get right into it because you want to learn how BBMA works. So, the easiest way to get the BBMA indicator, for example, on TradingView, it's on the indicators. You look at the search bar and you type BBMA, and then one of the options is going to be BBMA Trend Vision, which is the most clear one in my opinion, and you can modify the colors and stuff so you can see every part of it very clear. Now, yeah, let's see what BBMA is. So I'm gonna start it very simple. Let's first disable some stuff so you don't get confused, because all of this stuff you will get later, or you might already know it if you're advanced but still watch this video for some reason. But yeah, first start with the Bollinger Bands. That's what the BB stands for in BBMA, Bollinger Bands, which are these black moving average lines. I mean, only the middle one is a moving average, but whatever. Let me quickly remove the shadow of the other moving average. So yeah, this is the Bollinger Bands indicator, and how it's usually traded, is that it touches the lower band and it rejects for something, and you target the middle band like this. Like, that's usually the way it's traded. But I'm not an expert really on it, but in most cases I don't believe it works. Like, you might get a lot of cases like here where it touches the Bollinger Band, but instead of going downwards to the middle Bollinger Band, it actually goes through and then makes a huge move upwards. So yeah, that's basically also the system of BBMA. Instead of using the Bollinger Bands as resistance, you use the breaks of it as momentum. So if the Bollinger Band is expanding, for example right here, you see it gets very narrow and then it expands upwards and also downwards here in the lower band, and that means that price is having momentum to the upside, and it continues upwards, and when price starts losing momentum and starts rejecting, the band also starts curving downwards again, and price goes downwards. But yeah, that might be some, I don't know, advanced stuff. First, let's see what yeah, the other indicators are of BBMA. Let's add the other ones. We have moving average 5 applied to high, moving average 10 applied to high, and moving average 5 applied to low, and moving average 10 applied to low. Now I'm gonna add a shadow in between later so you can see it more clear, but for now you can see the moving averages, right? And the main idea behind this is like a barrier, almost like a trend line. And well, when you see the red moving average here, it would act as resistance if price goes downwards, and the green moving average would act as, well, not as support, but I guess like if price doesn't continue to break it, like here, then it can act like support. But yeah, the main idea is if it breaks to the upside, it should act as resistance on the lower side, as support on the lower side, sorry. And when it breaks to the downside, like you can see it here, breaks to the downside, then the moving averages on the upside act like resistance, like here, the candle rejected. Now, how can you make use of this? First of all, to be a little bit more clear, I'm gonna add the shadow to the moving average line so you can see it more clear. And well, the main idea is that, you know, when a candle closes above, for example, the moving averages, you know, when it tests the moving average on the low side, it's gonna act as support, and you know, you get something like this, you know, like this is our way to think about it. And when it closes above, like only above the moving averages, it's called CSA usually, which is like, you know, I'm gonna type it out right here so you can recognize what it's called usually, because it's in the Malaysian language. Let's see, there were no Bollinger Bands. When it only closes above the moving average, that's called a CSA. Okay, let me add a text. CSA, and it basically means, you know, directional candle, because it shows the direction is upwards. So it's not one of the strongest signals, but it is a sign that the price, you know, has some momentum upwards. But that's only when the price closes above the moving average only. Now, when you're at the Bollinger Bands, you see that, let me first unanchor this, yeah. When you look at price here, it closed above the upper Bollinger Band as well. So that's called momentum, okay? Also, in the short version, CSM, or candlestick momentum. Now, that's basically the two of the three, you know, directional signals. First means directional candle, and the second one closing above the, you know, top Bollinger Band is called CSM, candlestick momentum. And the momentum ones are usually the strongest ones, because it closes upside of the top Bollinger Band. So it usually gives, you know, a more clear direction. But yeah, let's see what the third one is, and it's actually called CSAK, and the K in the Malaysian language is for, you know, stands for strong, so it's like a strong directional candle, because it also closes above the middle Bollinger Band and the moving averages. For example, like here, closed above both. Now, in this case, it only, you know, it gave a move, as you can see right here. Closed above, tested the lower moving averages, and went up to the higher moving averages. So it gave a move, not a big one, but you know, you don't need a big move always. So yeah, those are the three signals basically of where price could be going. I'm gonna write it out so you can see it all in one picture. There's also, a little bit more English type of names for them, but since most education on YouTube is in Malaysian, I'm gonna keep it like this so you can recognize it more. Um, but yeah, this is the first thing about BBMA, these three signals. Now, when we have the second chapter, which is, okay, how do you trade this? Well, I already explained, like price closes above, then it tests the low moving averages, and it should go up at least to the higher moving averages. And yeah, that's one way to trade it. But there's also, BBMA shows momentum, but also loss of momentum. So what can that be? Well, the classic way to look at it, for example here, down below, we have a move of momentum. Now, when this momentum is over, price can reverse, okay? So I guess the fourth part of BBMA is called MHV, which basically stands for the market loses volume or loses momentum, okay? So how do you see what's happening? We can see that price tested the moving averages, came down at least to the low moving averages, but then instead of going down, it actually went up again without making a closure below the moving averages, the lower ones. And at the same time, the Bollinger Bands here don't expand anymore. So this means that, when it's not expanding anymore, there is not a lot of momentum anymore, which means price is making a move up again. So that's what it did. Now, where would you see the Bollinger Bands curve in real time? Let me get a vertical line like this, the red one. Gonna make you see it a little bit better if I make it thick like this. Now, like probably on, like on these two candles you see how it, on the lower part here, starts curving, and on the candle here, like it's basically fully flat, which means like you could see the curve right there on this candle. And there are, I mean, you can take an entry earlier if you have other confirmations as well, but it's a little bit more, I don't know, advanced. So yeah, that's called MHV. I'm gonna write it too. Unlock it here, and then price turns upwards again. There are many, type of MHV, because not always price makes a higher low and moves up again. On the example here, momentum, then after momentum there's a loss of momentum. After the momentum it makes a re-entry and then closes above again, like here and here, retests the low moving averages, moves up at least to the high moving averages. So if you paid attention, you would know that this right now here is CSA, not CSM, because it closed inside of the top Bollinger Band, but above the upper moving averages. Now, this is not the strongest signal, and after a CSM, a CSA usually gives either the strongest move or the weakest one. So yeah, like in this case, this is part of the MHV formation, and it's being taught wrong, in my opinion, on a lot of other channels which teach BBMA, because they say, okay, after momentum, there's MHV. No, after momentum, there's actually first a CSA, which has a re-entry usually, and then after that re-entry, which you see here, reaches the minimal TP, the upper moving averages, and then usually price decides if it wants to go down, okay? And from there it gives the big move usually, if like it doesn't break the upper moving averages. So in my opinion, the whole formation of MHV is this: after CSM, CSA, no break above the moving average anymore, and when it then continues downwards, it usually gives the move, you know, to at least to the other side of the middle Bollinger Band, right here. So yeah, those are the four, you know, types of signals, I guess, in BBMA, and they are CSAK, CSA, CSM, and MHV. And yeah, that's basically for if you want to trade one time frame or like no one time frame, then this is basically BBMA in a nutshell. So yeah, first part done. Let's go.